The Forbidden Encounter. The twin moons of Vorthas 7 cast a silver glow over the dense jungle. Strange plants, some glowing softly, swayed in the warm night breeze. The air smelled of damp earth and distant rain. Commander Ryan Blake stood at the edge of a small clearing, his heart pounding. He knew he should not be here. The Velari were a proud and dangerous species, tall, feathered beings with sharp talons and piercing golden eyes. They ruled this planet with strict laws. One of their most unbreakable rules: no human shall share the night with a Velari. But Ryan was not the kind of man to follow rules. A rustling sound came from the trees. Ryan tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. But then he saw her. Soraya. She stepped into the clearing, her deep blue feathers catching the moonlight. Her golden eyes locked onto his. Ryan swallowed hard. She was beautiful in a way that no human woman could ever be. Her form was elegant, her feathers shifting with every movement. But there was something else in her gaze tonight. Something different. "You came," Ryan whispered. Soraya tilted her head slightly. "I should not have." Her voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of their crime. They had met in secret before, exchanged stolen glances during negotiations between their species, spoken in hushed whispers in the shadows. But this was different. This was dangerous. Ryan took a slow step forward. "Then why are you here?" Soraya hesitated, her feathers rippling in an unseen breeze. Then, without another word, she closed the distance between them. Her taloned hand touched his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. "Because I cannot stay away," she admitted. Ryan exhaled. He had spent his whole life among the stars, fighting wars, exploring unknown worlds, facing death. But nothing had ever felt as terrifying as the way she made him feel. Their worlds were different. Their people were different. But in this moment, none of that mattered. Soraya leaned in closer. "This will change everything," she murmured. Ryan knew she was right. If they were caught, the consequences would be severe. The Velari were unforgiving, and his own people would not be any kinder. But he didn't care. He pulled her closer. The jungle around them faded. The war between their species, the rules, the threats, none of it existed in this moment. Only her, only this. The night stretched on, filled with whispers and unspoken promises. But then, everything changed. The morning after, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the dense jungle canopy. Ryan stirred, the warmth of the night still lingering in his mind. But something felt wrong. Soraya was gone. He sat up quickly, scanning the clearing. No sign of her. His heart pounded. Had she regretted their night together? Had she been taken? He stood up, his instincts screaming that something was very, very wrong. Then he saw it. In the center of the clearing, where Soraya had stood last night, lay a massive egg. It was at least 3 feet tall, smooth and glowing faintly. Strange golden patterns ran across its surface, shifting like liquid metal. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. No, this can't be. Velari did not lay eggs like this. Their eggs were smaller, dull-colored, and never glowed. This was something different, something unnatural. He took a cautious step forward, his hand hovering over his communicator. He should report this. He should call for help. But deep inside he knew. This was Soraya's. And it was his. A cold shiver ran down his spine. This was not just a mistake anymore. This was something else. Something that could change everything. Then the egg moved. A faint pulse of light ran across its surface, and for a brief moment, Ryan thought he heard something. A heartbeat. His breath hitched. It was alive. And it was waking up. The egg of mystery. The jungle felt eerily silent. The usual hum of nocturnal insects had faded, leaving only the sound of Ryan's own breath. He crouched near the giant egg, his fingers hesitating just above its smooth, glowing surface. It was warm. His mind raced. This was impossible. Velarri eggs didn't look like this, and no interspecies relationship had ever produced a hybrid before. Not that anyone had dared to try. His communicator beeped. Ryan flinched, almost forgetting he was still on duty. "Commander Blake, report back to base. We detected an anomaly in your location." It was Captain Reynolds, his superior officer. If Reynolds found out about this, Ryan was as good as dead, or worse, court-martialed and thrown into a black site prison. Ryan took a deep breath. Think, damn it. Think. Then the egg moved again. A faint, pulsing light spread across its surface, like ripples in water. Ryan took a cautious step back, heart pounding. This wasn't just some lifeless object. Something inside was alive. And it was aware of him. A desperate plan. Ryan scanned the clearing. Soraya was gone, but she had to be somewhere nearby. Had she abandoned him? No, that wasn't like her. But if the Velarri authorities found this egg before he did something about it, they would destroy it. He made his decision. He had to get the egg out of here. Ryan rushed to his small scout ship, hidden beneath layers of jungle foliage. The Stellar Drake wasn't a battleship. It was built for speed, not combat. But it had stealth tech, enough to hide the egg from Velarri scans, at least for a while. Straining, he lifted the egg into his arms. It was heavier than he expected. Whatever was inside was growing. Fast. Too fast. As he secured it in the ship's cargo hold, a sudden alert flashed across his console. Warning. Unidentified energy itjgnal. DHTCTED. Ryan's stomach dropped. They were coming. The Velarri enforcers arrive. A deep, resonating hum filled the air. Ryan looked up to see 3 Velarri warships descending through the sky. Their sleek, silver-blue hulls reflected the morning light, casting long shadows over the jungle. They weren't just here to investigate. They were here for him. "Commander Blake, surrender immediately." A booming voice echoed through his communicator. "You have violated Velarri law. Stand down and prepare for questioning." Ryan cursed under his breath. They knew. But how? Had Soraya betrayed him? Or had they been tracking him all along? His fingers hovered over the ship's controls. He could try to run, but against Velarri warships, he wouldn't make it far. His mind raced. He needed a distraction. Then, from inside the cargo hold, the egg pulsed again. This time, it wasn't just a flicker. A wave of energy erupted from it, shaking the entire ship. The air crackled with static electricity. The Velarri ships above hesitated. Something inside the egg was reacting to the danger. It was defending itself. And it was powerful. The egg hatches. Before Ryan could process what was happening, a sharp cracking sound echoed through the ship. The egg was breaking. He turned, eyes widening as a long, jagged crack spread across the shell. A soft, golden light spilled from within. Ryan swallowed hard. He wasn't ready for this. With one final, earth-shaking snap, the egg shattered. Amidst the glowing fragments, something small and fragile emerged. At first, Ryan could only make out its feathers, soft, silver blue, like Soraya's. But as the glow faded, his breath caught in his throat. The creature was Velarri, but also human. It had taloned feet, but human-like arms. Its eyes, golden, intelligent, aware, blinked up at him. Then, in a voice too small yet too clear, it spoke. "Father." Ryan froze. Outside, the Velarri enforcers were getting closer. The warships hovered, ready to strike. Inside, his child had just spoken its first word. And Ryan knew he would die before letting anyone harm it. The final choice. Ryan clenched his fists. He had only 2 options. Surrender. Let the Velarri take the hatchling. They would never let it live. Run. Risk everything. His career, his life, to protect the child. The choice was easy. Ryan turned to the controls and slammed the thrusters to full power. The Stellar Drake roared to life, tearing through the jungle as the warships above opened fire. Lasers streaked through the sky, missing by inches. Ryan gritted his teeth. He needed an escape route. Fast. Then, in the co-pilot seat, his child raised its tiny hand. A strange pulse of energy rippled through the ship. And just like that, the ship vanished. The Velari's judgment. The stellar drake reappeared in the cold void of space, far from Vorthis 7's jungle-covered surface. Ryan gripped the controls, heart pounding, scanning the star map. Where the hell were they? The ship's systems flickered, struggling to recalibrate after the strange energy pulse. Whatever had happened, it wasn't technology. It was something else. Ryan turned his gaze to the hatchling in the co-pilot seat. It was staring at its own tiny hands, tilting its head like it was just as confused as he was. Silver-blue feathers covered its small body, but its face, its eyes, held an unmistakable human intelligence. "Did you do that?" Ryan asked, his voice barely a whisper. The hatchling blinked. "I don't know," it said softly. Its voice was neither completely Velari nor entirely human. It was something in between. Ryan exhaled. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. This child wasn't just unique, it was powerful. And now, the entire Velari Empire would hunt them down for it. His thoughts were interrupted by a shrill warning alarm. Incoming terrain VLARI High Council. Ryan clenched his jaw. They found him. He couldn't run. Not again. His ship was running low on fuel, and whatever the hatchling had done to teleport them, it wasn't something they could control. With no other choice, he accepted the transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a dark, circular chamber, the Velari High Council Hall. At the center stood Soraya. Her golden eyes locked onto his through the projection, her expression unreadable. Behind her, towering Velari elders, cloaked in ceremonial robes, their feathers streaked with silver, watched in absolute silence. Finally, one of them spoke. "Commander Ryan Blake, you have committed an unspeakable crime." Ryan stiffened. A crime. Another elder, his feathers dyed deep red, stepped forward. "You and Soraya defied our most sacred law. You have created abomination." His beak curled in disgust. A creature that should not exist. Ryan's fists clenched. His child wasn't an abomination. Soraya raised a hand, silencing the elders. Her voice was steady, but there was something else in her eyes. Fear. "Ryan, surrender now," she said softly. "If you do, they may spare your life." Ryan scoffed. "And what about the child?" A long silence. The answer was clear. They would never let it live. The hatchling clutched at Ryan's sleeve, sensing the tension. Its tiny golden eyes flicked between the holograms. "Mother," it whispered. Soraya inhaled sharply. The elders recoiled in horror. "It speaks." One of them stepped back as if burned. "Impossible. It is an anomaly." Another snapped. "It must be destroyed before it grows stronger." Ryan's blood boiled. He was done listening. "You think you can decide that?" He growled. "You think you have the right to judge what it is or isn't allowed to exist?" The red-feathered elder narrowed his eyes. "You do not understand, human. This is not about law. This is about survival." Ryan frowned. "Survival." Soraya finally spoke. "Ryan, you don't know what you've done." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Soraya said, "The last time a child like this was born, an empire burned. The lost history of the Velari." Ryan stared at her. What was she talking about? The High Council remained silent, but their expressions were grim. Soraya took a deep breath. "The Velari were not always as you see us now." A holographic image flickered to life, a vision of a Velari civilization from thousands of years ago. Ryan's eyes widened. The Velari looked different. Their feathers were less pronounced. their faces more human-like. Soraya continued, "Long ago, we were not so different from your kind. We were explorers, dreamers, builders of great civilizations. But then, something changed. The image shifted, showing a child, glowing with strange energy, a hybrid. It was not the first, but it was the most powerful," Soraya said. "It grew too quickly. It wielded abilities we could not understand. And then, the vision darkened. Velari cities burned. Ships fell from the sky. An entire empire collapsed." Ryan exhaled. "You're saying my child could do this?" "No," Soraya said. "I'm saying it might be even stronger." Ryan looked down at the hatchling. It stared back at him, innocent and unaware. Could this tiny being really hold such power? No, he refused to believe that. "You're afraid of what you don't understand," Ryan said. "But killing this child won't fix your past mistakes." The elders were unmoved. The red-feathered one stepped forward. "Then what would you have us do, human?" He sneered. "Risk everything. Gamble the fate of our people on a single life." Ryan met his gaze without flinching. "Yes." The decision. The council chamber erupted in furious whispers. Ryan stood firm. He wouldn't back down. Then Soraya stepped between him and the elders. "Enough." She turned to the council. "The child is not a threat. Not yet. But if we treat it like one, we will create the very danger we fear." The elders hesitated. Finally, the eldest of them all, his feathers nearly white with age, sighed. "We cannot allow this child to remain unchecked." Ryan tensed. Here it comes. The death sentence. "But we also cannot ignore what has happened," the elder continued. "We will not kill the child, but we will not let you keep it either." Ryan's heart froze. "We will take it, study it, raise it under Velari control." Ryan's blood turned to ice. "Like hell you will." Soraya turned to him. There was something in her eyes, a silent plea. "Ryan, listen," she said. "This is the only way to keep you both alive." The hatchling clung to Ryan's arm. "No," it whispered. "I want to stay with you." Ryan's jaw clenched. Every part of him screamed to fight, to run. But if he did, he wouldn't just be fighting the council. He'd be fighting Soraya. He had a choice to make. Surrender the child, or defy the Velari and run, risking everything. Ryan took a deep breath. And then, he made his choice. A hatchling that should not exist. Ryan stood frozen, his fists clenched, the weight of the council's decree crushing down on him. The Velari wanted to take his child, to study it, to raise it under their control. But Ryan knew what that really meant. They were afraid. Afraid of what the child could become. Afraid of what it represented. Afraid of change. And what do people do when they fear something? They destroy it. The hatchling, sensing his turmoil, clung to Ryan's arm. Its golden eyes, so bright and full of innocence, looked up at him. "Father." That one word made the entire room feel smaller, hotter, suffocating. Ryan looked at Soraya, the one person he thought he could trust. "Is this what you want?" he asked, his voice sharp as steel. "To rip our child away? To let them turn it into some experiment?" Soraya flinched. She looked at the hatchling, at the way it clung to Ryan, at the way it trusted him completely. Something flickered in her expression. Doubt, regret. The High Council waited, their golden eyes locked onto her. Soraya hesitated. Then she stepped back. And Ryan knew. She had already made her choice. Escape or surrender. The red-feathered elder snarled, stepping forward. "Enough of this." With a wave of his talon, Velari enforcers rushed into the chamber. Tall, armored warriors with plasma spears aimed directly at Ryan. He was outnumbered, outgunned, but Ryan had never cared about the odds. His hand shot to his sidearm, yanking it free and leveling it at the closest enforcer. "Stay back." The room erupted into chaos. Soraya gasped as the enforcers took defensive stances, their weapons humming with lethal energy. The council members stood in stunned silence. No one had ever dared to pull a weapon in their sacred chambers before. Ryan's pulse thundered in his ears. He could feel the hatchling's tiny claws gripping his arm, feel its tiny heart pounding against his own. He had seconds to decide. Run. Fight. Surrender. The enforcers moved first. Ryan fired. The plasma bolt struck the first guard in the chest, sending him crashing backward. The others lunged. Too fast, too strong, but Ryan was already moving. He grabbed a ceremonial staff from the chamber wall, using it to block an incoming strike. With a grunt, he twisted, knocking an enforcer off balance. He didn't have to win this fight. He just needed a way out. A way to escape. And then, the hatchling screamed. The awakening. It wasn't a normal scream. It was pure energy. A shockwave exploded outward, knocking every single enforcer off their feet. The High Council staggered back, robes whipping wildly from the force. Ryan barely had time to shield his eyes. When he looked back, the hatchling was floating. Its golden eyes burned like twin suns. Its tiny hands trembled, as if holding back something it didn't understand. Ryan's breath caught. It was happening. The power the Velari feared. The power of the past. The elders watched in horrified awe. One of them whispered, "The prophecy. It is real." The red-feathered elder, however, was not awed. He was terrified. With a roar, he lunged, his talons aimed straight for the hatchling. Ryan moved on instinct. He grabbed the child and ran. The great pursuit. Alarms blared across the Velari capital. Ryan sprinted through the halls, the hatchling cradled against his chest. Behind him, enforcers swarmed in pursuit. Soraya's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ryan, stop. You don't understand what you're doing." "Like hell I don't." Ryan growled. Ahead, he saw a hangar bay. A row of Velari ships sat prepped for flight. If he could just reach one. A blast of energy struck the wall beside him, showering him in sparks. Ryan twisted mid-run, raising his sidearm and firing blind shots over his shoulder. He had no idea if they hit. He didn't care. He just kept running. The hatchling's tiny hands clung to his jacket, its breathing ragged, scared but silent. "Almost there, kid," Ryan murmured. "Just hold on." Then Soraya stepped into his path. A mother's betrayal. She was alone. No enforcers, no weapons drawn. Just her. Her golden eyes were unreadable, her feathers rippling slightly in the artificial wind of the hangar. Ryan skidded to a halt. "Move." Soraya didn't. "Ryan, if you take that ship, you'll be hunted for the rest of your life." "Then so be it." Her gaze flickered to the hatchling. "If you run now, we may never find out what it truly is." Ryan's grip on the child tightened. "I don't care what it is. I care that it's mine." Soraya hesitated. For one brief second, Ryan thought she might let him go. Then, her hand reached for her communicator. "They're in Hangar 3, she whispered. "Stop them." Ryan's stomach dropped. The woman he loved had just betrayed him. The hatchling, sensing his distress, whimpered. Its tiny hands clung to him harder. Ryan's chest ached, but there was no time for pain. No time for regret. The alarms blared louder. Enforcers were coming. Ryan's gaze locked onto Soraya. "Goodbye, Soraya." And then he ran. The great escape. Ryan vaulted into the nearest ship. The hatchling clutched protectively in one arm. He slammed his fist against the controls. The engines roared to life. Outside, enforcers swarmed the hangar. The doors began to close. Ryan gunned the thrusters. The ship shot forward, barely squeezing through the shrinking gap before the hangar sealed shut behind them. The moment they were free, he slammed the controls into hyperdrive. With a flash of light, they were gone. Nowhere left to run. Ryan slumped back in the pilot's chair, exhausted, shaking. The hatchling curled up in his lap, its small hands clutching his jacket. It didn't say anything. Neither did he. Because for the first time in his life, Ryan had no idea where to go next. And across the galaxy, the Velari had just declared him public enemy #1. The chase begins. HFY among TESTRs. The stars blurred into streaks of light as Ryan's stolen Velari ship hurled through hyperspace. His breath was heavy, his heart pounding in his ears. He had escaped, for now, but there was nowhere left to run. The hatchling, his child, lay curled in his lap, its tiny hands gripping his jacket as if afraid he'd disappear. It had saved him back in the council chamber, unleashing a shockwave of energy that sent even the most powerful Velari warriors to their knees. Ryan exhaled. "Kid, what the hell are you?" The hatchling stirred at his voice, blinking up at him with golden eyes that seemed too knowing for something so young. "I don't know," it whispered. Ryan ran a hand down his face. "Yeah, me neither." One thing was certain. Every Velari warship in the galaxy would be hunting them now. And Soraya. Ryan clenched his jaw. He had loved her. He had trusted her. And she had turned him in. The betrayal still burned. But he couldn't afford to think about that now. Right now, he needed a plan. Wanted dead or alive. A sudden blaring alarm snapped Ryan out of his thoughts. Incoming Terranism Galactic VROADCAST. Ryan's stomach sank. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing a Velari Grand Marshal in ceremonial armor. Behind him, a giant display projected Ryan's face and ship ID. "Attention, all star systems. The human known as Commander Ryan Blake is now a fugitive of the Velari Empire." Ryan exhaled through gritted teeth. "Here we go. He has abducted a dangerous entity and is considered armed and highly volatile. A reward of 50 million credits is offered for his capture, dead or alive." Ryan muttered a curse. 50 million. That was more money than some planets had in their entire economy. Every bounty hunter, pirate, and mercenary in the galaxy would be after him now. And the Velari, they wouldn't stop. They would hunt him. They would hunt his child. They would never stop. Ryan gripped the controls, forcing himself to stay calm. If he wanted to survive, he needed to disappear. Fast. The Kistuolin Sanctuary. Ryan tapped a command into the ship's nav console. The system flashed red. Access Royes to right. T.E. VELAR LOCK DEON in EFFEC. He cursed under his breath. They had already locked him out of every known spaceport. Every major system would be crawling with bounty hunters. Except, Ryan's eyes narrowed. There was one place the Velari wouldn't search, a place even they feared, a place not on any official star maps. He keyed in the coordinates manually. The ship's AI hesitated, then chirped in warning. Warning. Entering. Restricted is ACC2R. NMAPED territory, AAHAD. Ryan ignored it. The only way to survive was to go somewhere no sane person would follow. And that meant heading to dead space. GAOSTs of VTHE void. The ship dropped out of hyperspace with a sickening lurch, coming to a dead stop in the middle of nothing. The vast graveyard of broken ships drifted silently through the void. Ryan's throat tightened. This was the edge of the known galaxy, the place where empires sent things to be forgotten. Hundreds of ancient ships, shattered and lifeless, floated like tombstones in space. Their hulls were riddled with blast marks, their insides long since picked clean by scavengers. The only living thing here was him. Perfect. Ryan engaged the stealth systems and maneuvered the ship into a tight cluster of wreckage. From the outside, he was now just another dead vessel in an endless sea of ghosts. "We're safe for now, kid," he muttered. The hatchling peeked up from his lap, looking out the window. Its golden eyes reflected the wreckage. But there was no fear, just curiosity. "This place is old," it said softly. "Very old." Ryan frowned. How did it know that? Before he could ask, his ship's sensors pinged. "Incoming vessel DTTCTD." Ryan's heart stopped. They found him. The Hunter in the dark. A massive warship emerged from the wreckage. Its sleek hull painted midnight black. It bore no insignia, no faction markings, just a single skull emblem on its bow. Ryan's pulse quickened. He knew that mark. Everyone in the galaxy knew that mark. The ship belonged to Kane, the Reaper Dravik, the most infamous bounty hunter alive. Ryan exhaled slowly. Great, just great. A second later, his comms crackled to life. "Ryan Blake," a deep voice rumbled. "Come out quietly, and I won't have to kill you." Ryan tightened his grip on the controls. He was not going out quietly. "Sorry, Kane," he said, "but I've got better things to do than die today." The Reaper chuckled. "Suit yourself." A torpedo launched from the warship. The Shildawakens. Ryan braced for impact, but before the missile could hit, the hatchling raised its tiny hands. A wave of invisible energy exploded from the ship. The torpedo stopped mid-flight. For a moment, it hung motionless in space, then reversed course. It slammed back into Kane's warship, detonating on impact. The entire hull shuddered. Ryan's eyes widened. Holy shit. The hatchling lowered its hands, trembling slightly. Ryan turned to look at it, his heart racing. "Did you just?" The child's golden eyes glowed. "I don't know how," it whispered, "but I did." Ryan exhaled. He had known his child was special. But this was something else. Kane's ship was damaged, but still operational. Ryan couldn't stay here. Not now. He slammed the thrusters forward, ripping through the wreckage as Kane's warship recovered. Behind them, the bounty hunter's voice crackled through the comms again. "This isn't over, Blake." Not even close. Ryan gritted his teeth. He knew that. Because now, it wasn't just the Velari after them. Every hunter in the galaxy would be coming. And Ryan wasn't sure how long he could keep running. The secret of the ancients. The Turhchi is quiet of dead space. Ryan tightened his grip on the controls, weaving through the wreckage of forgotten ships. The hatchling sat beside him, its golden eyes flicking toward every piece of debris they passed. It wasn't afraid. In fact, it almost seemed drawn to this place. Ryan exhaled. "Kid, I hope you have an idea of where we're going, because I sure as hell don't." The hatchling didn't answer. It just stared ahead, silent and unnaturally still. Ryan had been in fights before. He had survived battles against pirates, Velari warriors, and black market assassins, but none of those things scared him like the unknown did. And right now, he was in the middle of something he didn't understand at all. A world beneath the grave. Why? Ryan's ship's scanners flickered, struggling against the strange energy field that surrounded this part of space. The wreckage stretched endlessly, drifting in an unnatural pattern, as if something was pulling it together. Then, suddenly, Ivan Kingnabuan energy signature DETCTED. A sharp ping rang out across the cockpit. Ryan snapped upright. What the hell? A huge metallic structure appeared on his scanner, deep beneath the wreckage. It was not a ship. It was something ancient. A station, or maybe something even older. Its size was impossible to measure. Hundreds of spires jutted out from its surface, some broken, some still glowing faintly with forgotten power. The Velari didn't build this. Neither did humans. And yet, it had been here for thousands of years. Ryan frowned. How did I never hear about this ***? The hatchling's tiny voice broke the silence. Because they don't want you to know. Ryan's stomach tightened. Who? He asked cautiously. The hatchling didn't answer. But it was looking at the station like it had seen it before. The Lost Station of VO Eartha IL-9. Ryan carefully maneuvered the ship toward the structure, slipping through a massive breach in the outer hull. Inside, the vast chamber was filled with ancient technology. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Some looked similar to Velari writing, but older, more primal. Ryan landed the ship on a platform that looked like it hadn't been touched in centuries. He turned to the hatchling. "All right, kid. You seem to know something I don't. What is this place?" The child hesitated, its golden eyes reflecting the flickering blue lights of the station. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, it said, "The beginning." Ryan's blood went cold. Beginning of what? Asterisk, asterisk. The hatchling turned toward the doors leading deeper inside. Everything. Asterisk, asterisk. Tisiciurites biraidi in time. Ryan grabbed his plasma rifle, just in case, and stepped out of the ship, his boots echoing in the silent chamber. The air was thin, but still breathable. This place wasn't entirely dead. The hatchling followed close behind, walking carefully, its small hands brushing against the ancient walls, as if it could feel something hidden beneath them. Ryan activated his wrist lamp, illuminating the dark corridor ahead. Strange hieroglyphs lined the walls, depicting Velari figures, but also something else. Humans. Ryan's breath hitched. "That's not possible," he muttered. Velari and humans had never coexisted in ancient history. Humanity had only met the Velari 200 years ago. And yet, the carving showed humans standing beside Velari warriors, as equals. Ryan's skin prickled. The hatchling placed a small hand on the wall. They tried to erase it. Ryan turned sharply. "Erase what?" The hatchling looked up at him. "The truth." And then, the Lu Ar Ning. Energy surge DETCTED. A sudden hum filled the air, deep and resonant, vibrating through Ryan's bones. The floor beneath them lit up with golden patterns, stretching outward like a pulsing heartbeat. The station was waking up. Ryan yanked the hatchling back, aiming his rifle as the walls shifted and moved. Then, from the darkness ahead, a voice rang out. Deep, ancient, powerful. "You have returned at last." Ryan froze. The voice wasn't speaking Velari. It was speaking English. The guardian of TKT passed. From the shadows, a massive figure emerged. It was Velari, but different. Its feathers were dark silver, almost metallic. Its eyes glowed with golden fire. And unlike the other Velari Ryan had ever seen, this one wore armor of unknown origin, fused with technology unlike anything in modern history. It looked ancient, but very much alive. Ryan raised his weapon. "Who the hell are you?" The Velari warrior stepped forward, its golden eyes locking onto the hatchling. "Not who," it said. "What?" Ryan narrowed his eyes. "Fine. What are you?" The warrior tilted its head slightly. "I am the last of the firstborn. The only survivor of the war that erased our past." Ryan's stomach twisted. "What war?" The firstborn looked at the hatchling. "The war to destroy what you now hold in your arms." Ryan stiffened. "My child." The warrior's golden eyes flared. "Not a child. A key." Ryan's pulse thundered. "A key. A key to what?" And then, the station shook violently, alarms blaring. "Warning! Incoming hostile forces DTTTD." Ryan's eyes snapped to his scanner. Soraya's fleet had found them, and this time, she wasn't alone. The Velari High Council, the Grand Marshals, warships big enough to glass entire planets. They were coming, and they weren't leaving without the hatchling. Nowhere left to hide. Ryan whirled back to the firstborn. "If you know something, now's the time to tell me. Why are they so afraid of my child?" The firstborn stepped forward, placing a taloned hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Because it is not just yours. It is the last of us, and the first of what comes next." Ryan's blood ran cold. The station's alarms blared louder. Enemy forces incoming. They had minutes left. Ryan clenched his jaw. No more running. It was time to fight. Then tell me, firstborn, he growled. How do I stop them? The warrior smiled. You don't. Ryan's breath caught. Then what do I do? The firstborn's golden eyes flared with ancient power. You let the child wake up. And the hatchling smiled. The final stand. He store imbari a kiss. The alarm screamed across the ancient station as the Villari fleet emerged from hyperspace. Ryan's breath hitched as his ship's holoscreen lit up with dozens, no, hundreds of hostile contacts. Warning. VLARI warships AP Pro-Ishachayang. The Grand Fleet had arrived. It wasn't just Soraya's personal warband anymore. This was an extermination force. Ryan clenched his fists. They weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to wipe out everything. The firstborn warrior beside him turned its golden gaze to the hatchling. It is time. Ryan looked down at his child, cradled in his arms. The hatchling's golden eyes shone with strange, unreadable emotions. Time for what? Ryan demanded. To die. The firstborn's gaze never wavered. No, time to decide. Ryan gritted his teeth. He didn't like the sound of that. But he had no time to argue. Because at that moment, Soraya's voice echoed through the station's comms. Ryan. The final warning. Ryan turned toward the holoconsole as Soraya's holographic image flickered into existence. She was in full Villari battle regalia, her shimmering blue feathers threaded with golden war paint. Behind her stood the High Council, their expressions cold as stone. She looked tired, but her voice was steady. Surrender the child. Ryan laughed bitterly. And then what? You raise it in a cage. Experiment on it. Kill it the moment it doesn't fit into your perfect little empire. Soraya's jaw tightened. You don't understand, Ryan. If you resist, you will die. And so will it. Ryan felt the hatchling's tiny fingers clutch his sleeve. He looked at his child, then back at Soraya. Then I die fighting. For the first time, something flickered in Soraya's golden eyes. Regret, sadness, or something else. The moment passed. Her voice was firm and final. Fire. The CEG of Daki Firstborn. The Villari fleet opened fire. Ryan barely had time to react before a wave of plasma torpedoes streaked toward the station, leaving burning trails in the vacuum of space. He grabbed the hatchling and ran. The firstborn warrior moved faster. With a single gesture, the ancient Villari raised its arms, and the entire station responded. The walls shook, symbols glowed, power surge. Then, in an instant, a golden energy barrier erupted around the station. The first wave of Villari torpedoes struck the barrier and disintegrated on impact. The entire station hummed with renewed life. Ryan skidded to a stop, eyes wide. What the hell did you do? The firstborn's voice was calm. I awoke the sentinel. Ryan turned back toward the holoscreen. The massive Villari fleet had stopped mid-charge. They were hesitating. Because the station, the long-dead ruins of an ancient civilization, was fighting back. And it was winning. The battle begins. The Villari warships rushed forward, unleashing another barrage of plasma fire. But the station retaliated. Massive energy cannons, hidden beneath layers of forgotten ruins, came alive. Golden lances of raw power shot through space, ripping through Villari ships like paper. Ryan felt his breath catch. This wasn't just a ruin. This was a weapon. The firstborn watched the destruction unfold with cold eyes. They will not stop, Ryan. Ryan gritted his teeth. Neither will I. He turned toward his ship. We're fighting our way out. Asterisk. The firstborn placed a taloned hand on his shoulder. You misunderstand. Ryan frowned. What? The firstborn knelt before the hatchling. Its golden eyes met the child's. It must choose. Ryan's stomach turned to ice. Choose what? The firstborn's voice was solemn. To end this war, or start a new one. The HATCHLING's choice. The hatchling trembled, its tiny hands shaking. Ryan knelt down, gripping his child's shoulders. Hey kid, you don't have to do anything you don't want to. The hatchling looked up at him. But I do. Ryan swallowed. Why? The child pressed a tiny hand to his chest. Because I am both, and neither. The firstborn spoke softly. You are the bridge, the last of the old world, the first of the new. The hatchling turned toward the battle unfolding outside. Ryan's heart hammered. Kid, whatever you do, please, don't let them use you. The hatchling closed its eyes. And then it began to glow. The awakening. The golden energy surged, spreading through the room like a tidal wave. Ryan stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The firstborn knelt, bowing its head. And then, Soraya's fleet stopped firing. The Velari warships froze in place, their engines flickering, their power cords failing. The entire Velari armada was paralyzed. Ryan's jaw dropped. Kid, what did you do? The hatchling turned, its golden eyes now brighter than twin suns. I showed them the truth. Ryan turned back toward the holoscreen and gasped, because Soraya's expression had changed. She was no longer angry. She was crying. Ryan's mind raced. What had the child shown her? Then Soraya spoke. I remember. Her voice trembled. I remember the past. I remember who we were. The High Council staggered back, confusion and fear written across their faces. Ryan turned back to the hatchling. What did you do? The child looked up at him. I gave them back what they lost. The end of the war. The battle was over. The Velari fleet withdrew. The High Council was silent. And Soraya, she fell to her knees. The firstborn watched in silence. It is done. Ryan exhaled, exhaustion washing over him. It was over. He looked at his child. The bridge between two species, the last of the old world, the first of the new. And for the first time he realized. They had won. EPIOGV. A NUU dawn. Months later, Ryan stood on the balcony of a new Velari human embassy, watching as diplomats from both species shook hands. The war was over. The hatchling, his child, stood beside him, watching history unfold. What now, father? It asked. Ryan smiled. Now, we live. And under the twin suns of Vorthis 7, a new future began. Together.